Hello. I'm HoJo.
I'm Hunsley.
And welcome to the 15th episode of HoJo and Hunsley's Hard Rock House, the safe space for old rock gumbies just like us, where if it's too loud, it's not that we're too old, it's just that when you're at our age, the doctor says you've got to look after your hearing. And we always listen to the doc, don't we, Hunsey?
Sorry, what did you say?
Very good.
I know.
How you doing, mate?
I'm good. It's absolutely shitting down with rain here in England, so it's good to be talking to you because it's probably very sunny where you are. But no, I'm all right. I've been listening to some good stuff this week, so I'm very excited to tell you what I've been listening to.
Yeah, I don't like the rain. I like the Colts song Rain, but I really don't like rain.
Well, you need to move somewhere hot like the south of France. Oh, okay, never mind.
Have you been blasting heavy metal this week?
Are you asking me what I've been listening to? Is that the segue?
Yeah, that's kind of a roundabout way of saying, what have you been listening to this week, Hunsley? That's only 1 minute and 19 seconds into the podcast. That's got to be the quickest route into what have you been listening to, Hunsley, that I think we've ever had.
I'm going to shock you again.
Shock me. Make me feel better. You're not going to put on your black leather, are you?
Dear God. We haven't done an episode on terrible lyrics yet. Save that one. No, I'm going to shock you in the fact that I've certainly been dipping my toes into the AOR ocean.
You have been a bit wimpwire, haven't you? It's quite surprising to me because I always had you down as the ultimate heavy metal man. Do you remember when you used to do that thing that you called the face when you heard heavy metal music that pleased you?
Yes, this is an audio thing, so I can't do the face. But you basically raise a fist, clenched fist, and point it in someone's face. It's not really an angry face, it's a call to arms face.
It's a this is fucking heavy face.
Yeah, this is heavy metal. Yeah.
But you're not doing that lately. What's going on?
I don't know, because I've always liked AOR, right? I've got a lot of AOR records. There's one album that I just went, I've got to go back and listen to it. Another album that I bought on import many, many years ago. And it's self-titled, otherwise known as eponymous. It's their eponymous debut album released in 1989. Now, obviously, 1989... that's the danger area, isn't it?
It's very late for AOR, isn't it? AOR has kind of had its day by 1989, hasn't it? I suppose the natural successor to AOR was hair metal, wasn't it? Because when MTV emerged, everybody suddenly went, you can't just have music that sounds nice, you've got to have people that look nice. And so hair metal became the thing, didn't it? So AOR was on its uppers a little bit by then. But you found an album that you loved.
We know what happened 2 years after 1989 may be the reason why this band only made one album.
Okay, and what was the band called?
The band was called Diving for Pearls.
Diving for Pearls.
Are you familiar with that band?
I'm familiar with the name, but not the music. I don't know why. I've read various things of people getting very frothy around the gills about how fantastic Diving for Pearls were.
Frothy around the gills.
Did you like that? People used to get frothy around the gills about Diving for Pearls, but for some reason I never listened to them. So this is absolutely a new one on me. To this day, I've never listened to Diving for Pearls.
Do you remember them ever being mentioned in passing in Kerrang?
Yeah, I do. I do remember them being mentioned. And I think the band had their supporters, but honestly, I think by that time, I'd given up on AOR music and I'd moved into all kinds of other things. I'd gone a bit Grebo by that time. I was a bit Cult and Zodiac Mindwarp.
Oh dear. God knows what you looked like. I can only imagine. But at this point in 1989, Diving for Pearls did their self-titled or eponymous debut album. They did come back with another record in 2005, but it kind of disappeared. This is the album that everybody knows. There was only one original member when they came back in 2005, who we will come on to because it's very important.
Where were they from, incidentally?
I think they were from... God, I haven't done any research. I think they were from Boston.
Nah, New York City, mate, because I've just gone to the guru of all things research, and you know what that is. Wikipedia, of course. New York City.
Oh, I'm sure they were from Boston. Anyway, they were a five-piece, and this record is an absolute AOR classic. It is full of everything you love about AOR. It's got tough guitars, great keyboards, great melodies, great songs. There's a track, I think it was the first single off the album, which I implore you to go and listen to, Give Me Your Good Lovin'. If you don't tap your feet to that and go, that is a chorus and a half, then I don't know what you're doing. Seriously, it's just a brilliant song. And the whole album follows along the same line. Other great tracks to mention are Never on a Monday and You're All I Know. Now, You're All I Know is quite interesting because the opening riff is exactly the same as Bon Jovi's Blood on Blood. So who wrote it first?
I wouldn't know what Bon Jovi's Blood on Blood riff sounded like, to be honest with you.
Oh, well, never mind. I don't know which one came first. It's one of those sort of crossover ones. I don't know whether John Bon Jovi managed to get access to the early demo tapes of the Diving for Pearls album and did the same thing as he did to Black and Blue and went, we'll have that.
Is John Bon Jovi a filthy riff filcher? Why don't you say, let's get him on the pod to find out? Because John Bon Jovi's never coming to our pod, is he?
Let's set the bar high. If we call him a thief, he might come on armed with his lawyers.
I'd be less pleased with that.
But they're an interesting band because one of the members, Yul Vasquez,
he's a guitar player, according to what I'm saying here.
He went on to become an actor. Yul Vasquez found his calling after Diving for Pearls got dropped by Epic Records after one record, and he appeared in an episode of Seinfeld.
I'm just reading about Yul Vasquez. It's the first time in my entire life I've ever heard of Yul Vasquez, but I'm already intrigued. And it does say between 1995 and 1998, he appeared in not one but several episodes of Seinfeld. He even had a character. His character was called Bob, the intimidating gay guy.
Oh, sounds brilliant.
Yeah. No. I don't remember him. Do you remember him from Seinfeld?
Yes, I do.
What was intimidating about him?
Let's not go down a Seinfeld rabbit hole. This is a podcast about hard rock and heavy metal, okay?
Yes, but what was intimidating about the gay guy? I must know before we move on. Do you remember?
It might have something to do with George Costanza. Why are we talking about this? Can we just...
Okay, all right, back to Yul Vasquez and Diving for Pearls.
Yeah, okay. So go on. What else has he done?
Apparently in 2009, he played acoustic guitar with Ian Astbury of the Cult under the name The Soft Revolt. And apparently they appeared in New York City on the opening night of a play called Savage in Limbo, which was written by somebody called John Patrick Shanley. Now, it says here in the guru of all things absolutely believable, Wikipedia, Ian Astbury was producing this play, Savage in Limbo. But I don't think it's like producing like a record where you actually sit there and do anything. I think producing is a bit of a euphemism for putting money into a play, I think.
You know Duffy, don't you? Maybe
I should email Duffy, shouldn't I? Yeah, and ask him what he knows about Astbury's production of John Patrick Shanley's play, Savage in Limbo.
I imagine his reaction will be the same as mine when I just started laughing.
A fool and his money, I think, is probably what he would say. But this fella, John Patrick Shanley, it gets even more interesting here when you go down the rabbit hole, because he won some kind of Academy Award for writing Moonlight. Do you remember that? It was like a rom-com from the 80s with Cher.
Moonstruck,
that was it. And Cher was in it.
Yeah, she won an Oscar for that.
1988, and she won an Oscar. Talk about mad connection.
There's another fact about this band. David Weeks, who was the bass player in Diamond Pearls, he became a lawyer, and he was the lawyer that represented Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee in their sex tape lawsuit against the internet company who basically put it out there. I don't know whether he's still a lawyer, but what a story.
It's an incredible story, isn't it? And again, this 6 degrees of separation thing with Diving for Pearls is absolutely incredible. And you're right, from what I see here, he was a lawyer who represented Pammy and Tommy. So Diving for Pearls, they all seem to have come out smelling of roses, really, haven't they?
Yeah, and the singer, Danny Malone, and I only found this out because someone mentioned it to me the other day. He lives in Brighton.
Brighton in England. Why would Danny Malone, who's presumably American, would he end up in Brighton, England?
Who knows? But we need to find out. This is my let's get him on moment. But in all seriousness, I wonder when Danny Malone last talked about Diving for Pearls. But secondly, why did he move to Brighton? And the fact that he's in England and he's on Facebook means that we can probably stalk him, send him a message and go, do you fancy coming on and talking about one of the greatest AO albums of all time? I know that we've got a lot of Diving for Pearls fans out there who do listen to the pod. So I think they would all absolutely love it if we got Danny.
Okay, so your task, my friend, is to now get hold of Danny Malone. And obviously you'll talk a lot about how much you love his AOR music. And I'll talk more than ever about his mate who ended up in Seinfeld. Is that a deal?
That is a deal. What have you been listening to, mate, this week?
Okay. My album I've been listening is The Tale of the Tape. Do you know who made The Tale of the Tape in 1980?
I do know that album. That is an album by Billy Squier.
It's actually Billy Squier's first solo album. A very, very important record. Do you know why it's a really important record? Because it didn't sell jack shit.
I know this because my teenage daughter is rather fixated by hip-hop and rap music.
Ah, yes, I think you're on the right lines here, my friend.
I must admit I have heard it coming from her bedroom, or she's put it on in the car, and I have said to her, that is a Billy Squier sample. And obviously she just looks at me as if I'm a fucking alien or something. And I go to her, that bit there is by Billy Squier. And she goes, who's Billy Squier? And I went, he was a rock musician from the 1980s, and then all of a sudden it just turns into, she puts her AirPods on and goes, I'm not listening to you anymore. It was like a lot of this record sampled by hip-hop artists. I've heard it on Jay-Z, I've heard it on Run DMC, but you might want to tell me a little bit more.
You're absolutely right. The first song is called The Big Beat.
Yes.
Right? I've got the big beat. And it's all very big rhythmic drums, lots of space around them. And that is why the hip hop guys loved it so much. The sound is immense and there's a lot of space around it that you could imagine people putting different types of rap all over the top of it. So it became a real go-to for rappers. And according to the research that I did, it's been sampled on more than 300 recordings. So it really was an incredibly influential recording. And Squier himself said, I'd always envisaged the big beat leading off the Tail of the Tape album with the biggest drum beat the rock world had ever heard. And then he says, I'm not going to tell you exactly what I did because that would spoil the fun for the producers, drummers and engineers who still try to figure out how to copy the magic. So he knows that that has really become a very influential thing. And funnily enough, the Big Beat and the Tail of the Tape album were produced by a guy called Eddie Offord, who was the producer on a lot of the early Yes prog rock albums. Not really any great connection musically, but that's where the Big Beat sound was developed. But the really big album that Billy Squier had was not Tail of the Tape, because as I said, it didn't really do much commercially.
Don't Say No, wasn't it?
His second album, which came out a year later in 1981, was called Don't Say No. And that was where all the big songs came. The Stroke, I think My Kind of Lover was on there. That was a really, really big record. And that album was produced by Billy Squier alongside Mack. He was a German and his real name was Reinhold Mack. And he produced a lot of Queen's records and got a reputation for doing those big, pompous, massive production jobs. He'd also worked with Electric Light Orchestra and Sparks. So you can tell the arena he was working in. And that was really when Squier went absolutely massive, because Don't Say No went top 5 and was on the Billboard charts for over 2 years. The Stroke was the big single, got to number 17. It wasn't the biggest hit song of all time, but for the album to stay on the charts for 2 years. And that was in the days when people bought records, isn't it? So he would have made a serious amount of money. But we've jumped ahead a little bit here, because Tail of the Tape was the record that I'd been listening to. Hadn't listened to it in a long while. Don't know if you know, the other interesting part about Billy Squier is he was managed by Bill O'Coin. And I'm sure you know who Bill O'Coin managed.
Kiss's manager.
Exactly. And Bill O'Coin was obviously a very, very big New York manager in the late 70s, because Kiss was supernova. And he discovered Squier playing in another band called Piper. And Piper was signed by O'Coin, and he got them signed to A&M, and they did 2 albums on A&M that really didn't get anywhere. And I listened to them once I'd started going down the Billy Squier rabbit hole, and they weren't that good, to be honest with you. But by the time he's gone solo, when Piper didn't happen and Tail of the Tape comes on, he's really starting to hit his straps there. The Big Beat's a really interesting song. It's different to your traditional AOR rock. It's got really big sound. Also, Squier was kind of into Led Zeppelin. You can hear quite a lot of Zeppelin motifs throughout the song.
Well, that big drum sound.
He's quite a high-pitched, kind of slightly planty vocalist. And also some of his guitar licks were very Page-like. So there's a song called Who Knows What a Love Can Do, and You Should Be High Love has got the Kashmiri type vibe to it, but with a much more pop flavour. His top lines are very poppy. 1 or 2 songs on the record are quite unashamedly pop. There's one called Callie-O, one called Rich Kid. And you might not think that would sound like a combination that works. It works so like hip-hop drum beats, Led Zeppelin vocals and guitar things and pop melodies. But actually, it really does come together well. And there's some great songs. Like You Should Be High Love's good. Who's Your Boyfriend's good. Rich Kid, Callie-O, The Big Beat. Probably on an album of, how many songs did it have? It had 9 songs. It's probably got 5 that are real bangers. And I think that's not a bad hit rate, is it?
That is pretty good. I'm more aware of the Don't Say No album, but that was because of The Stroke. I remember hearing The Stroke in rock clubs, The Stroke was like a song that filled the dance floor.
Because it's got a dance beat. That's why that hip-hop thing was derived from it, because those things make your body move a little bit, don't they?
Yeah.
Billy Squier obviously went on to have a very decent career.
Particularly because Jay-Z sampled the big beat on 99 Problems. There you go. Ka-ching.
I don't think he's coppering up, is he?
No.
But you know what did happen?
No.
This shows you how it can really go quite badly wrong. I knew that Billy Squier had made a video that everybody says was possibly the worst video ever made. And it was a video for a song called Rock Me Tonight. I'm just reading what people say about it. Reputedly ruined his career is one comment on the internet. People talk about how he was poncing around in an apartment in New York and his dancing was just so buttock cringingly awful. And it's all the way through that whole video. People say he went from playing sold out arenas to playing Nowheresville overnight. I don't know whether that's true or not, but my gosh, it was pretty poor.
Well,
have you never seen it?
No, what I'm going to have to do, in the same way that I went and looked at Klaus Meiner's dancing, I'm going to have to...
There's a theme emerging.
And I did put that on our Facebook page. And the amount of astonishment was quite brilliant.
We're like a public service, aren't we? Bringing these things to the attention of rockers everywhere.
I'm going to have to do the same for the Rock Me Tonight video, aren't I? So
it was from 1984, and it was obviously at the time when people had suddenly gone, oh shit, MTV, that's where it's at. But I think nobody had quite worked out what it was that you were supposed to put on MTV to give your music the best chance of survival. And Rock Me Tonight has absolutely gone down in the annals of history as one of the worst music videos of all time. So, single digit listener, do go and watch Rock Me Tonight by Billy Squier. Tell us if it is the single worst music video of all time, but don't dismiss him on the basis of that. Go back and listen to the tail of the tape. Good album.
Brilliant. Excellent choice, HoJo.
Thank you very much. So let's move on, shall we? I've been meaning to talk about this one for a while. I want to start off with a question. Hunzi, have you ever been arrested at a gig?
No, I've never been arrested, but you're going to tell me that you have. Was it a Vardis gig?
It was.
Tell us what happened then.
Pull up a chair, fill your pipe with tobacco, light it, and luxuriate in this following tale. I was, I would say, 15 years old. This is before I started writing for Kerrang. And I'm already really excited about both rock music and the prospect of writing about rock music. So I'd already started my own little fanzine. I can't remember if we've mentioned this on the pod at all yet. It started out as Flying V and then evolved into Phoenix. Typical fanzine of the day, you'd print it yourself. It would all be very homemade, but it cost you, a few quid. Then you'd stand outside venues like the Manchester Apollo and the Free Trade Hall and try and flog it to unsuspecting rockers. And I loved interviewing the bands, and that was part of the excitement of it. You got to meet bands. I can't remember exactly how it happened that I ended up arranging to interview Vardis. Do you remember Vardis?
I do.
They were from Yorkshire, I think.
I think they were from Wakefield. I saw Little Angels at the Rooftop Gardens in Wakefield. It was £1 a pint that night. It was brilliant. Vardis, though, they were led by a guy called Steve Zodiac. He was a really cool fellow when he was young. Do you remember he had the longest straight blonde hair? Really long. I can't remember how I got in touch with them, but somehow I got in touch with Vardis and asked if I could interview them. They said, yeah, we're playing this pub called the Spread Eagle in a place called Ashton-under-Lyne. Get yourself there and we'll do the interview. Now, that sounds quite an easy task, doesn't it? Yeah.
But the problem is when you're 15 years old, A, you're nowhere near old enough to be out drinking a pub. B, trying to get from where I was on the south side of Manchester to the Spread Eagle in Ashton-under-Lyne, which is probably 25 miles, but on public transport, it might as well have been fucking Australia. It was going to take forever and a day. But I was determined, and so I've managed to get myself up to the gig. And it's just a total spit and sawdust pub. I did my research before coming on today, and of course it closed down long ago. But actually, there are loads of people who write things on Facebook groups and all that. I remember the Spready. It was brilliant. It was a great rock pub and all the rest of it. So that's nice.
Were you armed with a cassette player?
Yeah, very much a cassette player with the two buttons on the front that you had to press down. Do you remember when you used to record the top 30 on a Sunday night when Slade was on? Yeah. And when you were recording the top 30, you were just hoping against hope that the Budgie didn't start squawking when Slade were playing. Yeah, so anyway, I turned up with all that, and they were very nice to me, and it was all great and lovely, and we watched the gig, and it was all fantastic. Ear-splitting volume, and probably about 40 people in, but they were playing like they were on stage at Wembley.
Was it at 100 miles an hour?
Oh, I see what you did there. Yeah. The Vardis album, 100 miles an hour, or song?
I think it's the album, yeah.
So anyway, it's all good. And of course, I've totally blown it because by the time the band have come off stage, all the buses have gone. So I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to admit to the members of top rock act Vardis that I have no idea how I'm going to get home. So I'm just going, what I'll probably have to do is start walking, and I'll probably end up somewhere in the bus shelter until the morning or something. Anyway, the gig's over. Everybody's left. I'm hanging around. I think actually, I remember now. I had admitted to them that I'd missed my bus, and they said, we'll drop you somewhere near to where you can get a train tomorrow morning or whatever. So I'm waiting for them. And then as they start loading out their gear, everybody's left. All of a sudden, Plod turns up with the old Black Mariah and the Blues and Twos going, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they come piling into the pub and make a beeline for the members of Vardis and start doing the full hands behind the back vibe.
For what?
I'm presuming it's just like, have they got a bit of puff on them? Or can we make an example of these long-haired people or whatever? It just seemed like completely out of proportion because there was no reason for them to be in that pub assaulting poor old Steve Zodiac and his cohorts. Anyway, rather brilliantly, I don't know why it came upon me to shout this, but the first thing I said when I saw what was happening was, "Oi, I'm with them." And of course, you can imagine what happens then, don't you? So then I'm there, arm behind the back, frog marched out, straight into the back of the Black Mariah and off to the local Nick with the band in the back.
Did that make the interview?
Do you know, I honestly don't know whether the feature happened because I have a terrible feeling, what an awful thing to admit, between that happening to me and actually being able to write the feature, I think I got my break on Kerrang and then it just kind of got lost in the mist of time. So I'm not sure there was ever anything written about this marvellous incident, but that means it's an exclusive for the single digit listener that they're going to hear that story for the first time. So we're in the back of the Black Mariah, off to the Plod and thrown in a cell, literally. It's like you're watching something out of Z-Cars or whatever, but actually thrown in the cell.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, fucking hell, I'm in a whole heap of trouble here. I've missed my bus home. My mum's going to be going bananas.
I was going to say, because you normally get a phone call, don't you? You get an option to make a phone call.
I don't remember whether I got the option to make the phone call or not. I don't know. Anyway, the upshot is that we're all sitting in this cell going, well, we've done fuck all. So, what's going to happen here? Are they going to try and plant something on us? And I seem to remember that we were in there for a couple of hours and eventually they just came in and booted us out and went, just piss off and don't darken our doors again. So nothing really happened because there was no reason for this to happen in the first place. I'd been released from the Nick at about 2 a.m. I seem to remember that they very kindly drove quite a long way out of their way to get me somewhere near to home. And I managed to sneak back into the house and probably made some feeble excuse as to what had happened. I don't think I ever told my mum and dad about it, but there you go. I was arrested with Vardis.
So what year are we talking about here? 19?
This is going to be 1981.
Have you encountered Steve Zodiac since then?
Never spoken to him since, but do you know what I did, Hunsley? There's a Vardis website and there's a little contact box, which I immediately did and sent a note going, you may not remember me, but do you have any recollection of getting arrested in a pub in Ashton-under-Lyne in about 1980 or 1981? And unbelievably, I haven't heard back from him. It's an absolute disgrace. So whoever's running Vardis's online properties, they need to have a fucking word with themselves. We're not going to give up hope, though, are we? Well, somebody one day is going to look at that website and find this dusty message from me.
We never gave up hope when we initially reached out to Michael Coons and that's true. Silence.
As a very young man, I was, what's the term that I should probably use for how I felt that night? Shitting myself. And I was more worried than anything else about what my mum was going to say.
Did you learn that the words that you do not say are, I'm with them?
You skulk off into a corner. So there you go. That was my story about being arrested long before the days of Kerrang. Fortunately, I didn't get myself a criminal record. We've heard a few criminal records in our time, haven't we?
Yeah.
And on that bombshell, I think probably it's time for us to say adieu and adios until next week. Because we've rattled through some stuff there today, haven't we? Talked about terrible videos, being arrested by the law, somebody being in Seinfeld. It's been, once again, a smorgasbord and a cornucopia of hard rock trivia that you can't get anywhere else in the known universe. Ain't that true, Hunsley?
Exactly. And I can't imagine for 1 minute that Yul Vasquez has ever been talked about on a podcast.
Can we get him on the pod, Huntsy? Can we get him on the pod?
We need to have an episode called Can We Get Him on the Pod?
And it'll just be us talking aloud to a load of people that will never come on the pod.
Oh, HoJo, hang on. Just before everybody goes, can I just remind people that you can contact us and you can give us words of wisdom, things you'd want us to talk about on usual social channels. So you can get hold of us on Twitter or X. I prefer Twitter at HoJo and Hunzi. Instagram is HoJo_and_Hunzi. Yeah, I know, rubbish. But if you want to be old school, just contact us on email, which is hojoandhunzi@gmail.com. Or you can contact us on Facebook direct. Just find our Facebook page, send us a message, comment on the stuff that we post about, and that would be brilliant.
One other point to the single-digit listener. If you could give one person the prime info that HoJo and Hunzi's Hard Rock House is your podcast of choice, just one person, that helps us spread the word, and hopefully this time next year we'll be millionaires, Hunzi.
Or we'll still be talking about a load of shite.
For no money.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, as always. I might go and listen to Vardis' version of Hawkwind Silver Machine. Do you remember they did that? It was a great version, actually, if I remember right.
They did. It was very good. And I'm going to go and listen to 99 Problems by Jay-Z just to give Billy Squier some more money.
All right, lovely. Have a good one. I'll speak to you soon.